same way, there's another thing that links the city of San Francisco derailment to the Sunset Limited derailment.
Well, yeah.
And that is a article that came out.
I would say that it is the reason that the Sunset Limited derailment happened the way it did.
Very possible.
I will disagree with that, but give me a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so here's what we're bringing up, is that in October of 1995, an article came out in a magazine called SP Trainline talking about how the sabotage was done. It was written by a guy named John Signer. He wrote an article, and of course the FBI immediately show up at his doorstep when they figured out it was out there. They started interrogating and questioning him about this. He, of course, sang like a canary and gave them whatever information they wanted.
I would too.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
If you were like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
how did the FBI find out about this?
I don't know how they found out about it. To be quite honest, that has never been specified how they figured it out. But they wanted to know.
I'm kind of wondering if John Signer actually, when he heard about it and he had just written that article, I'm kind of thinking he might have contacted them.
Well, he might have, because his article came out before the derailment.
Right before the derailment.
Yeah, but it could be that he called them. I don't know, but what they wanted to know is the details of it, where he got his details, and, oh, by the way, who gets this magazine? They really wanted to know.
And it was a fairly small publication?
It's a teeny publication. So here's the deal. I tried to contact him. I wanted to talk to him about what was going on. He never replied to any of our attempts. So
which is okay.
Yeah, which is fine. I totally then turned around and I was able to get a back issue of this particular magazine. For anybody who wants to know, it's issue number 45, which is the fall 1995 issue. And it's really interesting. I know I gave it to Joe after I'd read it. There's a lot of really cool information about the cars that are in.
Didn't give it to me.
You said Joe could have it first.
I know.
Yeah, you can have it next. But yeah,
there's a lot of cool information about the cars that are in the city of San Francisco line.
One of the things I love about it is how every car gets its own name.
Yes,
and
that's so cool.
And there were two great ones: Twin Peaks and Chinatown.
Yep.
Because Twin Peaks was one of my favorite TV shows way back when.
And the movie Chinatown.
And Chinatown is one of the best
Jack
movies.
Nicholson?
Yeah, great movie. If you haven't seen it, you must see it.
It actually holds up.
It
I
does.
watched it 6 months ago. It totally holds up.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, this came out really, I mean, probably like 9 or 10 days before.
No, it's more like a month or so.
What was the October?
Well, fall, would that come out in October or September or August?
So that's the thing, is that it doesn't have a date on it. It says it's the fall issue. And on their website, they have a month listed, but it had to have come out ahead of time. And you know how magazines do that. You
So it could have
subscribe.
been September, October.
Yeah, you get them early, but it was a quarterly magazine as well. Only came out every 3 months.
Okay.
But I read the article, and the article is really light on details of how this happened. I figured out a lot more by finding drawings and articles that were written by people who were analyzing the crash.
Is it enough, though? I mean, really, if you read that...
If you knew about trains, it would be enough to tell you how to do it. If you didn't know about trains, it would be just enough to get you run over by a train, I think.
Okay.
Because you'd be screwing around on the tracks, and a train would run you over.
And I guess one could also argue that if you know about trains, you probably know how to do something like this anyway.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking
it's not such a hard thing to do.
And here's the thing, is that the majority of the information that describes what was done in his article, it is quotes from the then, this is in 1939, president of Southern Pacific, a guy by the name of Angus MacDonald, and he was talking about it, the wreck, 6 days after it happened. So it's quotes from him, which I feel like if it's in this, those quotes were everywhere.
Yeah.
So it would have been in a bajillion locations that people could have pulled that content from.
Although, not so... I mean, yeah, yes. On the one hand, yes. But, you know, from 1939, it's not as convenient as saying, hey, this thing hit someone's mailbox a conveniently close number of...
But if you're a train enthusiast, you work on the line, or you really like trains, you know your history. I mean, I was on some of the forums, and the things that people were rattling off was just like, the sheer amount of information. It's kind of like guys who know the stats for the Super Bowls or baseball games.
I'm just arguing that it's like an Occam's razor sort of thing, where
it is
just
amazingly.
It's a huge
convenient.
coincidence.
Yeah,
that these things happen so close together. So while it's really easy to say, well, anybody could have found that information. That's true, yes, but it is super convenient that the information was in someone's mailbox within a month of having this happen again.
Yeah, and even though it was kind of light on the details, I mean, there was enough in there, and there were photographs and stuff that showed it pretty.
You can get
it's
an
probably
idea.
enough to just like to spark the idea, right?
Well,
if you know about trains, I don't know that you necessarily think, I will derail a train by doing this thing that I know how to do. But if you read a thing about it and you go, oh yeah, that's how I can sabotage the train. That's how I can.
That's a really easy way to get around.
That's a really easy way to do it. Yeah.
No, I'm not in disagreement. I feel like the magazine may not have been as prime of a.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, no, it's just
that's totally fair.
The magazine gives you the idea. You're a guy who works for the railroad, let's say, and so you think, oh, I bet I know how they did that. They just moved the rail over a couple inches, and waha.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. Well, enough. I think we need to get into theories.
Oh yeah.
It's about time.
It's past time.
Way past time.
Yeah.
It's way past my bedtime. Okay. Our first suspect is
theory
is Sons of Gestapo.
Yes. We have the shadowy organization.
Yeah, Joe, so if anybody does... I'm going to need your help here in a second,
Okay.
Joe. Anybody who doesn't know, you may recognize the name Gestapo. Joe, you're going to have to pronounce what that stands for, because it's an abbreviation.
Yeah.
And I cannot...
My German's a little rusty, but I would say it is Geheime Staatspolizei.
Okay.
Better than me. I just pronounce it gazpacho, which is food.
Which is the best.
Yeah.
But the Gestapo were the secret state police in Germany for the Nazis. That's probably where you recognize that name from.
Absolutely it is. 100%.
Yeah. The easy answer is to think that the Sons of Gestapo are actually the ones that did this and then left notes claiming it because they were some kind of racist / hate / crazy people group. It's very easy to think that, but as I said before, they never showed up before and they never showed up again.
I guess I will just quickly say that, again, I don't know if they were right or not, but the flyers, the copies of flyers, the text of flyers that we found don't seem like a racist or hate group. They seem like a paranoid conspiracy group.
Yeah, that's kind of what
but
I
they
would
don't.
say.
It doesn't seem like they are trying to promote some kind of propaganda of hate or anything.
All right, so
does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
And
I wanna jump ahead here a little bit because the reason I use those terms is that when I took a look at the state of Arizona.
Oh, there are a lot of hate groups there.
There's a lot of hate groups.
Absolutely
there were, in 2014, there were 16 active hate groups, plus the little ones that just pass under the radar, plus the little militias.
Where did you find this list at?
I don't remember where I was at, Joe. I was doing all kinds of Googles on this stuff and just kind of doing surface information. There's probably much more than that. And maybe there's fewer, but the point is,
I guess
there's a lot of groups that are very secular in that manner, which is why I use that term.
Right, but I think there are also a lot of groups who are not considered hate groups that are that kind of, New World Order, everything like that exist, and they often do these one-off things. There's a lot of mysteries that we've covered in the past where it's like this one weird thing happened and we don't know why, and all of a sudden we think, oh, it's this one crazy person who really believes in the New World Order.
Could be.
So I'm happy to say that it's the Sons of Gestapo. Thank you. And that it's just a one-off crazy person that has called themselves that, not a group at large, whatever. Well, but I know you have more to say about that, so I'll stop.
But yeah, I mean, Timothy McVeigh was kind of a one-off thing too. I suspect this was not a group though, but
yeah.
Well, let's go ahead though. Let's suspend all of that. Let's just operate under the presumption that Sons of Gestapo is an organization, and they have some kind of agenda.
Sure.
Okay, even though, again, have never heard of before and haven't ever heard of them again. It could be some small cell organization. I don't know. But if you think about what's in the letter, the notes, ignoring the New World Order part, okay, let's take that out of the fray for a second.
Okay.
And we only read into the stuff that talks about David Koresh and the Branch Davidians in 1993, which, if you don't know, for folks who don't, they were an organization that the government, I mean, the simple version is that a lot of shots were fired, the place went up in smoke. And then if you also think about Ruby Ridge, which was a situation where there's two guys, Randy Weaver and Ken Harris in 1992, who the government had a siege on their compound, and Weaver's wife and child were killed.
I thought it was just his wife and not his baby that got killed. She was holding the baby, but I thought she got shot in the head.
I thought his
The
son
baby
got
survived.
shot as well.
I could be wrong.
I
but-
guess for me, like, either way, he suffered a great loss.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's a
And,
good point.
and so somebody may have said and there, I remember this as a, I was in high school at the time, and it was all over the news, and people were outraged about this, and oh my gosh, all these things that are going on. It may have been that somebody finally said, you know what? I have to have an outlet. I have to show the world how screwed up this government is for doing this stuff, and my way of going about that is that I'm gonna derail this train. This is how we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that you're killing a lot more civilians than government employees, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, none of them are employees of the BATF or the FBI.
True.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. But then again, there was a lot of, I'm going to use the phrase lone gunman. I mean, Timothy McVeigh, he, in Oklahoma City, it's the, I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so please, if I do, sorry. It's the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building.
Yeah, that's how it's pronounced.
Oh, is
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Every time I said it before, I felt like I said it wrong. But, he did that. He took the law into his own hands. Weird fun fact, by the way, McVeigh was at Waco handing out flyers.
That's what I hear.
In 95?
No, in Waco it was 90.
3?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought we were...
Confused me. Don't do that. I'm easily confused.
I just thought you meant, like, he was in Waco when this was happening, not like he was in
During
Waco
the siege.
when that was happening. Got it.
Handing
Sorry.
out pro-gun flyers.
Of course he was.
But it's totally possible that there was some group who did this, and then
Or a
the
person.
group disbanded, or it was a person. I think I've talked about this before. Have you guys read The Monkey Wrench Gang?
Yeah.
No.
Well, actually, I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, I know I've talked about this on the podcast before. It's a book from the 70s about radical environmentalists, but they do this thing, and then once that thing is done, they totally disband.
I have read that book.
Yes.
I read it in middle school.
Yeah,
Just don't worry about why I read it in middle school.
that's fine.
Just don't worry about that. Yeah, I mean, I
Hey
think...
Duke was one of the characters.
Yeah, I think
Hey Duke Lives is the book after.
part of it is, I think you don't think it through a lot. You don't think about the fact that the authorities are not going to publish your letter. You would assume you leave these letters all around and it's going to make it into the news and people are going to spread what you're saying and that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you do this thing, which is not great. And then you leave a letter and you think, my message will be just everywhere. And then the
Nothing
FBI
comes of it.
says, no, we're not going to publicize this at all, because why would we publicize this letter? And you go,
But
crap.
you
And
see,
open
here's
it-
the deal: is
You open it up for copycats.
well, but yeah, oh no, you definitely do. But if these guys were really a thing, and their note didn't get published by the FBI, all they got to do is send a letter to a newspaper. Maybe send letters to several newspapers. That's all you got to do.
Or if it's
so
just
if
one
they had
person,
truly been a sort of political movement or trying to, that's what would have happened. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not going to disagree with that
I'm
at
just
all.
going to argue both sides.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. You're going to stand and go both sides of the tracks. I
Yeah.
see it. Okay, we're going to go to our next theory/suspect,
Okay.
which is an angry employee of the rail
Unnamed
system.
angry employee.
Unnamed angry employee.
Yeah. So this is a good one.
It actually is kind of a good one. So if we look at what happened after the derailment, we're going to move to 1996. Southern Pacific, who managed that portion of the line, they were merged with Union Pacific, who is another giant rail line. And people still to this day, you can see Southern Pacific and Union Pacific cars running all over this country. If you're near a freight line, you'll see them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the mergers of companies, A, don't happen overnight, and B, they tend to not happen as a surprise, and C, everybody always looks at mergers as, well, there's a bunch of people who are going to get laid off.
Well,
you're going to lose your job.
Yeah, if you're merging, the thought, right, is that you already have overlap that you're competing in, and that your goal is to eliminate the competition in that area.
Right.
So that there are two employees there, and one of them's going to go.
Yep.
Not always the case.
Not always the case. And so the theory here is that somebody who was a railroad employee was opposed to the merger and worried that they could potentially be losing their job.
Maybe they knew they were losing their job.
And so what they do is they went ahead and they intentionally sabotaged the line in an attempt to make this such a bad thing that the merger with Union Pacific wouldn't go through, and therefore their position would be safe.
Yeah.
That's really the basis of this
It's
theory.
not the worst theory I've ever heard.
It's
Well,
not.
no, but there's variance on it. Somebody who got fired, somebody who knew somebody who got fired. That's either by Amtrak or by Southern Pacific.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be either one.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of suspects to look at.
But the problem with the I'm opposed to the merger or we hate Amtrak, blah blah blah, is that Southern Pacific itself had been in decline for a long time. In the early 1900s, Southern Pacific was known as the Octopus because they had so many lines.
Dun, dun, dun!
Yeah, the octopus again.
They had so many lines and they sprawled so far all over this country, and their central hub was on the West Coast, that they were huge. But of course, they were declining just like everybody else. And by the 1980s and 1990s, they were in a dire situation, and people were probably more worried about losing their job because the lines were getting shut down than anything else. So
Yeah, so in that case, it makes rational sense to not oppose the merger.
yeah, and to not screw up the line.
But I talk to people all the time who believe all sorts of inane things that simply aren't true.
That's true.
And so don't overrule ignorance and dumbness.
No, that's an actual thing, though. You're laughing, but it
It is. No, you're right. I shouldn't be laughing at it, but it is true.
Yeah, there are people who they'll believe any propaganda that's thrown at them.
But here's the interesting thing is that from the job loss perspective, I looked up the merger of Union Pacific and Southern Pacific, and I couldn't find any reporting that ever talked about the number of jobs that were cut. Doesn't mean jobs weren't cut, but it sounds to me like maybe it wasn't a giant slash and burn operation. It might have been.
It probably would have been reported. You would have found some news articles.
I would have expected to, and I never found hardly anything about it. None of them ever talked about that. So I feel like the merger was kind of an amicable thing.
Well, the thing about it is you need if this guy was employed, say, working on the tracks, which it sounds like he had the tools to do that kind of stuff, then they really can't cut that workforce by all that much, if at all. I mean, they still have.
It was probably a pretty thin workforce at that time, anyway.
Probably, yeah. They still have to maintain those tracks.
Yeah. And you actually bring up a good point right there, which is as an employee, you've got the tools, which is kind of an important thing here. There's two ways to pull the spikes out.
Yeah.
You can use a hydraulic tool, which makes it go super fast, but you got to have the truck and the machinery to do that, and it's kind of obvious if that's happening. Or you've got to use a giant pry bar, and those pry bars are,
they're pretty long.
The height of a man. They're 5 or 6 feet high.
Oh, there's
The height of a person, Devin. Don't give me that look.
There's a third way.
Okay.
When I did this when I was a kid, and that is, you and your friends walk along the tracks and you look for loose ones and you pull them out.
But they pulled so many of them out
in
a row.
sequence. That's it.
No luck.
But that means that they would have been using company tools, which means they were company tools that nobody could tell where they were used at, and nobody would look at the company tools and never be able to know if the company tools were used on this particular site.
It's not so hard to find a long crowbar.
You're right. You can go to the Home Depot
Yeah.
and buy a giant crowbar, but it takes a lot of effort and time to pull those things manually.
Well,
The hydraulic one is why I think that if it was an employee, it would have been done via hydraulic.
so here's a question. How often, do you know how often that line was inspected?
I don't.
Is that something,
I know they
inspect
inspected regularly, but I don't know what the frequency of regular means.
So
Not every day.
So I guess my question would be: is that something you can pull a couple
Ahead of
spikes
time?
up every day or whatever, and then you just wait until it's your right hour to pull up the really important ones where the lines or the rail are joined together, push it over, and then spike them back down? Is that? Do you think? I mean,
That's possible.
it's
Because
for me, it's kind of like a canvas, right? You can pull certain pins out, and the canvas won't collapse on itself. And that it could be at something that you would be doing over time until you find exactly the right moment.
I could see if somebody was able to pull, let's say, half a dozen a day.
Yeah.
I think they pulled like 21 or 28 spikes, something in that neighborhood. It was in the 20s. So I could see over the course of 2 days doing a half a dozen more at a time, and then the line not moving. You haven't weakened its foundation.
Well,
and then
especially
on
if you
that
know-
last day, yanking the remaining half or third or quarter, whatever.
Right.
That is absolutely plausible.
Yeah.
That's absolutely a possible way to do it. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, so
I
then you
always
would be
imagined this
using a
job as
crowbar.
an all at once.
I had to until literally just this moment.
I still think he could have pulled them all at once too.
I mean, I
'Cause if
think
you had
you
the right
could've.
tool, then it's
Or if you
probably
had
not that hard.
like 2 people or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I just mean if we're saying it was done by a crowbar that you get, at like Ace or Home Depot or whatever, it is going to take you longer. It is manual work, but if that's what you have, you might
And
do it over
spreading
the
it
course
over
of a little
days
while.
makes it easy to not be caught on the track pulling spikes when the next train comes down the line.
Yeah, well, you can hear the trains and feel them. You can hear
Oh,
them
yeah.
coming a
Oh,
long
yeah.
ways away.
No,
One
but
thing I
you know what?
noticed-
People on the guys that are driving that train, they see what's down the line, and unless it's hidden behind something, they're like, "That's weird. There was some dude on the track yesterday. Hey, somebody reported a dude on the track again today."
There is this thing called desert camouflage, but also,
Or standing right under the trestle.
You
He's
know-
wearing it right now.
I know he is.
absolutely.
I can
yeah.
barely see him.
But you hear the train coming, you can feel it for a while away.
Oh, yeah.
Just jump right under the bridge, right? If you're standing under the bridge, they're not going to see you standing under there.
You're right.
Just sit down for while it goes by and then wait
Chill.
and then,
Yeah.
go
Drink
back
a
to
beer.
pulling.
Yeah, the other thing about the spot that they picked, or I should say he picked, is there's
Or she. Come on.
okay, that's true.
Could have been a she.
most
Equal
serial killers,
opportunity
yeah.
terrorism here.
Yeah. Is that there's a road just to the east of the rail line, although it's not much of a road. It's really hardly a road at all. But that's
That
But
wasn't the case back then.
oh yeah, it wasn't there then.
Uh-uh.
'Cause I would imagine it would be for maintenance purposes and such. I imagine it would have been some sort of a rough
according
road.
to the articles and stuff that I've read, a lot of the roads were at best barely there because they were farmland. So it wasn't an easy. It took an hour and a half to get to the wreck site, the site of the wreck from Phoenix. So you were driving on these itty bitty roads. Now today, evidently, it doesn't take that long because the roads are much better. But they've been created, so I don't know. But don't rely on that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, I was going to move to our next theory / suspect. Unless you have any other on that? you
About
guys?
that? No,
Okay.
not really. No.
Our last, actually, fun fact before we move on.
You keep saying fun fact and then not saying things that are fun.
This is actually a fun fact.
Okay, fun fact.
So I didn't know this until my research, but according to the internet, you know who Sprint is, right?
Like the
Yeah.
like the
Phone company, the cell phone company. Turns out, according to the research that I came across, Sprint was created by Southern Pacific.
Well,
It was created, the acronym of Sprint stands for Southern Pacific Railroad Internal Networking Telephone.
Telephony.
That's what
is it telephony or telephony?
No, I don't care. It's telephony from now on.
telephony.
No, it's
But
telephony.
it was an internal communication system.
God, that's
and
so
then
good.
they branched it out, and it eventually became Sprint, the cell phone company.
Well, there you go.
So, hey, something good, something large that,
That is
survived
actually a fun fact.
from Southern Pacific.
Oh, okay.
Last theory.
Okay.
It was somebody angry at the rail line because the rail line was taking their land. Because when it's a government organization, I don't know if anybody you've ever had this where they annex your land. They say, hey, we're going to pay you a price for this land. And you say, take a hike. They say, well, you can give it to us for this amount of money, or we can just take it.
What's that called?
Eminent domain.
Yeah.
Yes, because my family had property taken for that very reason.
Where they take
Yeah.
it for the greater good of the country.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And
Or
they pay you
state.
a
And it was an
totally-
access road.
And
And
they
they
pay
do
you a
pay
totally
you.
fair rate.
Well,
Yeah.
They
That's
pay
up
you
for
a,
debate.
Yeah, but they pay you a rate. And it could very well be that somebody was PO'd because it was that land was taken from them, or it ran through the middle of their farmland, and it's a giant nuisance because you can't drive across your field. You got to drive 20 minutes that way and then hang a left turn and then hang another left turn and drive 20 minutes back the other direction when you could have just gone 2 minutes straight.
this feels
So-
silly because we literally just talked about the fact that this rail line had been established since like the late 1900s, right?
That's true.
But they
It's
move
not-
they move lines
But
and
not-
they upgrade lines
not
and they
in the
may
90s.
have expanded. I mean, I don't know, Devin.
I
I'm saying that this is the theory that is
I
out
hear
there.
the theory. I'm just dispelling it.
I agree that the problem is this sounds like Crazy Farmer John went freaking crazy and did this crazy thing because he's Crazy Farmer John, and that's all there is to the theory.
yeah.
There's
That's
not much there, yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm
not
just-
a whole.
It's
I was
got
just
some-
giving my 2 cents of I feel like that's dumb because I feel like the train rail has been there forever.
Yeah,
I personally
exactly.
like my-
Train rail.
Exactly.
That's the
And-
technical term.
And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing is that after you've done your nasty deed against Southern Pacific and Amtrak, guess what? The tracks don't go away.
No.
They're still there, huh?
If you really wanted to do that, you would get rid of that whole trestle, right? You would get rid of a big old chunk of the rail.
Well, what you
do something way more destructive.
Wait, Devin, you just may have hit on something, which is if you remember the 1939 City of San Francisco line, when that derailed,
It got rid of the whole thing.
destroyed the trestle. They actually moved, Joe and I were talking about this the other day, is if you look at pictures of where that line is now, they've moved it. They've
true.
taken out one of the trestles, they've moved the line so it only crosses the river once.
Yeah.
And that maybe somebody had that idea. They're like, it's going to
Then
destroy it.
Then they would have to not know anything about trains, which goes against everything that we've been talking about. Because they would have to know. They would have to not know that the car improvements had been made, so that they don't do that anymore.
No, I mean, this is both ways.
Yeah.
You're
It's not
damned if you
good.
do and damned if you don't.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
good.
I think he's probably not. You might be a local rescue worker who wanted some overtime. You know?
No,
I don't think that's it.
You don't think so?
Okay.
You've got-
That's all of my theories. You guys got anything else?
I got a couple of theories.
Okay.
This is a fun one. One possibility, and this again is like, kind of weak, but just conjecture, but maybe somebody on the train had an enemy who wanted him dead.
It's Joe's go-to theory time, kids.
I know.
This is why I
could
really
be.
wish people could hear my eyes roll.
Yeah, if we were doing like
Yeah.
TV show, this would be much improved.
But it is possible, though. It's just certainly, I think, more plausible than the crazy farmer theory.
I would agree it's
I
better
would give
than
it
the
equal weight.
Yeah, and it could have been somebody, say, who it could have been one of the crew, like say the engineer or the conductor who or the guy who did get killed, even possibly. They knew they were going to be on that train, and they knew when the train ran, and so
They would have workman's comp.
yeah, exactly. Another possibility is that it was just some random twisted lunatic, kind of like the Unabomber.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Sylvester Matushka?
Why do I recognize that name?
Yeah,
Wait, is he in Europe?
Yeah, Hungarian.
Yes.
Hungarian.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was a mechanical engineer who really got a charge out of causing train crashes.
Yeah.
So and so in August 31, he caused a derailment.
1931.
Yeah, 1931. Did I say 1831?
No, you said August 31. It's
Oh,
August
okay, yeah.
1931.
August 1931. Yeah, he derailed the Berlin-Basel Express train in Germany, and no deaths in that case, but a lot of people got injured. And then a month later, in September, he blew up a bridge. It was the Vienna Express was going towards Vienna, and it crossed a bridge over a deep ravine near Budapest. And he blew up the bridge. It plunged into the ravine. 22 people died, and a whole bunch of other people got severely injured.
Yeah.
And he psycho that he was right there on the spot because he apparently, like I said, got off on this. And at the time, when people
the guilty party at the scene of the crime, jumping up and down, going, "Whee!"
Yeah, I know. Well, at the time, he was questioned a little bit, but he said he'd been riding on the train and he just crawled out, and that's why he's standing here. And so they let him go, but eventually the law caught up with him later. So interesting story. But his motive was apparently he was quoted as saying, "quote I wreck trains because I like to see people die. I like to hear them scream," unquote. So maybe it was just some flaming psycho.
That's possible.
Yeah.
Totally possible.
I mean, you can't rule it out.
No.
Absolutely cannot.
Yeah.